a surgical mask or medical mask.
There we go. We're up and running.
All right, what is a medical mask?
Toilet paper.
And baby wipes all have in common. Besides just being in Bob's office.
Wow.
I mean, whatever.
Let's chat about it.
All right.
Well, let me ask you guys this before we start getting into this. How's your 2020 vision, all that stuff? How's your year been going up to this point?
Pretty chaotic, pretty crazy.
Absolutely. We are right now sitting on no new business walking in. That's pretty much how everybody's sitting. But we are surviving on God's grace and Milo's sweet tea at this point.
All right, well, that's good. And we're trying to figure out here at church how to have church.
Yep.
So it's forcing us to be creative, like what we're doing tonight, to reach out to our audience. So.
Up to this point, things were going pretty well. But obviously, this throws a wrench in a lot of things. As a school teacher, this is we were on spring break this week currently, so that's worked out pretty well. But next week and the weeks after, got to figure out some unique ways to communicate with the students and deliver content. So kind of what we're doing for church, same thing, delivering content that's meaningful, but also is creative because we're kind of limited by certain technology and can't meet face to face, so that changes things up a little bit.
Well, let me ask you then, you guys ever faced anything like this before in your lifetime?
Not in my lifetime.
I don't think anybody past probably, since the Depression have we seen anything like this.
I would agree.
Even 9/11, they're saying, like the stopping of flights and hotels and stuff like that, just the amount of chaos that's happened. We haven't seen anything like this.
And all those things were relatively short-lived. That was catastrophic and really bad for a day or two. I remember gas lines and stuff being long. It's maybe the only advantage here over some other instances. There hasn't really been a line at the gas station, and the prices are going down. So for consumers, that's awesome. But we've lived.
But I got to know. Why is everybody running out and actually getting? What's toilet paper of all things, right?
I guess because they feel there's not a good alternative. I guess that would be, other things are, but there's a lot of, I went to the grocery store last night, and Shane was talking about this. We talked yesterday, not a lot of meat, a lot of pasta was gone. Toilet paper was pretty much wiped out. There were a few eggs, but then other things that were in abundance, like most of the other things that you would need. So definitely not experienced anything like this. And I've lived through, obviously, 9/11, the end of the Vietnam War. I don't really recall that. I was pretty young. But a couple space shuttle disasters, some nuclear disasters, only one that I can think of here in our country, 3 Mile Island, when I was younger. We've seen the fall of communism, all kinds of interesting things, but nothing where we had to stay inside and stay away from people. Never can recall anything like that, and where it looks like it will be going on.
I was laughing because last week when our governor, announced that the schools were shutting down, I sent my guys home an hour and a half. The night before that, I went out to get paper towels for the shop, and they were completely out of paper towels, toilet paper, everything like that. But I said, go home, just get some, stuff to eat and things like that, because it's going to get packed at 5 o'clock. So it's 4 o'clock. I go to Meijer and I'm grabbing stuff, and I find myself panicking. I don't panic ever. I'm the guy looking out, that dad that's looking out like there's a tornado coming, standing out there. But I found myself going, I got to get ramen noodles. I got to get more, just more and more. And then I'm like, wait a minute, step back, pray for a second, and be like, what is going on? But just that panic sets in real quick, and it can just wash over you like a wave, man, and you're just like you're underneath it and just at its will.
Well, and I remember you talked about panic, and you were talking about what happened in your life. And of course, we've been through this. We're about the same age. We've been through some of the same things, but
not like that youngin' over there.
Well, no, he's exactly. Ramen noodles, though, right? If you're gonna pick anything from the store, ramen noodles. All right, go for it. But anyways, I remember. Really, this is the third time in my life where I remember, maybe fourth time, where the news nationally was all everybody on the TV glued to it. The first time I remember would have been back in the, I think it was mid 80s, 84, somewhere around there, where
I was 4.
the space shuttle,
Really?
space shuttle blew up.
86.
Remember that? It was 86.
86.
Okay.
January.
Well, Christy
86.
McAuliffe was
Yeah,
the
from your
teacher,
area?
and she was from obviously at
school.
Concord High
Yeah.
School. And I was an 8th grader, so I wasn't in Concord High School. I would have been in the next year, or Concord, what we would
Concord.
say
Yeah, that'd be
from where
Concord.
Concord. You know, and so I remember being in the cafeteria. We're all in there gathered watching
Mm-hmm.
the space shuttle take off, and we're excited about Christy McAuliffe, and then you know, it exploded, and I remember as kids like, oh, look, it exploded, yeah, because we didn't think that it had.
Right.
We just thought it was part of the way it was flying. And then we realized it was, and it was like dead silent. Everybody glued the TV. So I remember that. Then I remember 9/11, and then I remember also Matt Maupin.
Yeah.
And I realize that's a little more local
Yeah, very
here,
much so.
but I remember just glued to the TV and just, you know, I mean, what's going to happen? And so panic, you know, sets in. Of course, you look at everything going on now, right? We got panic and people going to the store and everything shutting down, and we're violating the 6-foot rule right now, you know, and all of that. You know, so when I think of panic, you know, I think there's a human nature that we have that just kind of goes to that. I would say some of you that are viewing, when you think about what's going on now, or maybe, you know, this is for mainly college students, so you're panic over how am I going to pay my college bill, or you got exams coming up, or how are you going to take your exams for the rest of the semester.
Well, those who are seniors, whether it's seniors in high
Yeah,
school or
yeah,
seniors in
yeah.
college, you're so close to the end, but now what's the end look like? Will you get to graduate? Will there be a ceremony, something that you've worked
Some things
diligently
even
for?
like just prom. I mean, you know, you miss
Prom.
out on a lot of those key things.
And I realize you did not relate into this, but sports have been canceled
Which
in
has
many
been disappointing.
respects.
Hey, but let me tell you this: as a business owner here,
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
we
true.
do a lot of T-shirts for business. It's amazing how many, you know, this has affected us so much that schools canceled. So we had, you know, 8 to 10 orders right off the
Sure.
bat this week that we lost because nobody's playing softball, nobody's playing baseball, nobody's playing, you know, nobody's, you know, the schools are shut down. So, yay sports.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
Well, I think the bigger picture, though, is kind of what we're talking about is everybody's panicking, right? Or it seems to be. So they're shutting
Well,
this
even if
down,
it's
shutting that down.
not
without-
an outward panic, there's usually an inward
Sure,
unsettledness.
sure. The anxiety
So, for
inside.
sure.
And so, you know, just for our viewers, I wanted to share with you the statement: choose prayer over panic. Trust in God's sovereignty. I thought of a couple verses, Philippians 4:6, right here. Be careful for nothing. Don't get anxious or worry, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And so take it to God and pray about it. And I think at James 4:7, I love this verse. Cast all your care upon Him, for He cares for you. And that word "cast" has the idea. We don't have a ball right here, but it's the idea of throwing something up in the air, and you got to let go of it for it to, you know, to go. And unfortunately, you know, our cares come back down, and we try to grab them again, right? But it's the idea of, hey, just throw it up to God. You know, God's got this, and we don't know what's gonna take place, but we certainly know that we can cast our cares. So we choose prayer over panic in times like this.
And very comforting to know that we go to a God who knows all. This didn't surprise God. He sees it. He knows it. He's aware of the ending. We're not. And I think that's where our fear does have to get turned into care and being concerned, realizing that God is omniscient. He's over this.
Well, and it's not like this is the first time this has happened,
No.
right?
I mean, this is the first time something like this per se, but not the first time that anything has happened. Historically, probably the closest thing that we could relate to this, and none of us were alive, unless you know somebody well over 100 years old. Nobody else was alive, but the pandemic that happened with the worldwide flu in 1918 and 1919. So as a history guy, you know, did a little research here and looking up. It actually came in 3 waves. Kind of the first one started in the spring of 1918. Relatively mild, but we had a lot of people fighting overseas, and they were thought to have contracted it maybe through fighting in the trenches. Some of the worst outbreaks when they come back then in the fall of 1918. And you noticed that at Fort Riley in Kansas and a few other places where it was spreading very rapidly. The third wave kind of came into the spring of 1919. All told, it's hard to get real good totals on this because some things were censored because of this, but probably about 50 million people worldwide.
Wow.
50
my
million
goodness.
people. Some will estimate up to 100 million, so it's hard to get that. In the United States alone, 675,000 deaths. And you have to remember, at that time, our population was about 105 million, which is a third of what we had. So over 500,000 people died.
That's incredible.
3 times as many as killed actually in World War I. And when we study history, we talk a lot about World War I, World War II, and we kind of briefly touch on this flu, this pandemic or influenza epidemic, sometimes called the Spanish flu. The reason is Spain was one of the first nations to report on it, not because they had more information, but because their information wasn't censored at the time. They were neutral in the war, so they actually published information. A lot of other nations were really hesitant to put information out there because they thought people would panic. What's interesting with this one compared to today's flu, today we know the most vulnerable are older people, younger people, or those with compromised immune system. And this, the highest death rates were people in the 20 to 40-year-old range. And a lot of it because of close proximity.
But then in the flu?
And then yeah, with the 1918 flu. So not now. You're okay. You're okay for right now.
Yeah, but he's still old. So
Yeah, well, he's getting there. He's still.
Hey, listen, I'm in my 30s for a few more months.
Hey, but I will say that Joe Rodriguez, who's watching online, just said you look literally tall.
I saw that. Thank you,
angle,
Joe.
So.
Oh man, that must mean I'm slouching here.
It's the angles.
That could be.
It's got to be angles because
The
I
thing
look
that happened-
puny compared to you two. But anyways,
Well,
that's fine.
I've been working out.
That's
And
good.
at home, I've got
That's kind of
time
a
to
good
do that. I
point.
can't go to a gym, but downstairs, basement.
Hey, just a quick plug. If you want to come to my house and work out downstairs in the gym, $25 a night.
Wow.
Go.
He's got to pay the bill somehow.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple things about this flu that were a little bit different than today. Number one, a lot of people died from secondary issues and secondary diseases. Antibiotics weren't around. So a lot of people died of pneumonia and some other issues. It got to the point where people were, this sounds a little graphic here, but bleeding through their noses, their mouth, their eyes.
Oh, wow.
Through the hemorrhaging. Their faces would turn blue or purple. So there's some really interesting stories related to that. And the other thing is how quick this one happened. People would find out they were sick, and oftentimes within a week, even 5 days, they would be dead. And the third thing is, and this is kind of what relates it to today, is some places quarantined and some places did not. The classic example, and you probably have seen some of these may have been online that you've seen, Philadelphia and St. Louis. St. Louis did quarantine and kept the numbers relatively low. They flattened that curve as we talked about. Philadelphia did not. In fact, they had a big a Liberty Bonds or like a War Bonds rally of 200,000 people crowding the street, and then from there, cases spiked. It went crazy. So that's why we're doing what we're doing today. Those who are in the healthcare field and in our government are looking at this. This is really the closest thing we've had. Obviously, there's been H1N1 flu, bird flu, swine flu, all these type of things, but nothing as widespread and as quickly as contagious as this. So they're looking back 100 years, but you're comparing things. Obviously, medicine has advanced quite a bit. And the other thing, social media, and obviously it can be good or bad. I think you'll probably mention a little bit more about that, but it gets the word out, and hopefully people will adhere to these regulations, and hopefully.
Well, you almost feel like there's two sides, right? You've got the two extremes
Definitely.
of, it's all political and it's all to get Trump out of office and yada yada yada, and you got the other side that, hey, we better do everything that they're saying we ought to do, and they take it to that extreme, and of course last week was a little different because we didn't have as much knowledge of what's going on, or we didn't have as much say from the president and the governor, all that. But now, I mean, it's pretty clear across the world, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's
The last 15
quarantined.
days have just been
crazy.
We've never had this much information push out. And you said something about social media. Think about how quick that has gotten out to us through. I mean, we've got these updates that are popping up in notifications on our phone when the task force is talking, and how many of us are glued to our screens to find that out. One of the things I want to go back to real quick was you were talking about the models that they were looking at 100 years ago. Have either one of you guys seen that Washington Post simulation? I don't know who it
I've
is.
looked at a little bit.
You
I
can
looked at a
Google
few
it.
of them.
But they do 4 different simulations, and they're talking about flattening that curve. And if anybody doesn't know what that curve is talking about, they're talking about if 1,000, let's just say 1,000 people are going to get it, the coronavirus, and they get it really, really fast. They hit the peak, and then it comes out, and they kind of recover from it fast. But the problem is we don't have the beds, and we don't have the the ability to treat
Kind of
everybody.
overwhelms the healthcare
Right.
system.
So then flattening that curve is spreading that out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had 4 different kind of simulations, and it's just a computer generation, but it's literally showing it would be essentially what we're doing now, and just kind of quarantining partial, doing partial quarantining, and allowing some people to move around, and you see this one model of the way it's working out. Then you see this complete quarantine that's we're seeing right now in San Francisco, and you're seeing almost a very low amount of people getting sick, but nobody's going out. And the problem being there is you're I mean, as we're kind of seeing now, we're seeing it just demolish our economy.
Good article came out today. It's kind of looking at South Korea and how they were balancing that idea of how do we give people rights, allow them to travel, be out, conduct business, yet quarantine those who are sick.
Right.
Obviously, in a nation like ours, we like liberty, we like freedom,
Sure.
we like being able to do the things that we do, church and other things as well. But there's times that we have to limit those things. And they were just talking in that article a little bit about the cultural differences of, people there tend to respect elders a little bit more, and they tend to regulate their own behavior more. This is definitely a call for us as citizens, but even more so as citizens of heaven, to be a good steward of, the things that God has entrusted with us, our family, our church, and our community, where we say, okay, what is the best approach? And, none of us are scientists, none of us
Right.
up here are. There's probably some listening, I'm sure, online. So we have to trust the people who do this, who study these things, and who make a living doing this, and hope that the information, and trust that the information they're giving is accurate.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point. We have the right to worship, right?
Absolutely.
We have the right to gather and worship God, under the First Amendment and all that. But with that right, we also have a responsibility.
Absolutely.
And our right isn't really being violated right now. Again,
Right.
we're still able to meet, whether it's online versus on-site, small groups, et cetera. So the responsibility then goes to, I think of Romans 13, 1 through 5, where we're asked to really respect the authority that really God has placed over us. And in verse 1 of chapter 13, let everyone submit to the governing authorities, since there's no authority except from God. So the authorities that exist are instituted by God. So we got the responsibility to submit to that authority. Now, when it violates our First Amendment or our right to worship God, and they say we're not allowed at all, then you would appeal to the higher authority, which indeed would be God, right? But that's not the case right now. The case is they're suggesting that we do certain things to minimize the spread of the virus, to like you said, to not have the spike where the medical facilities and medical personnel can't handle the number of cases getting the virus, so it's to flatline that curve. And I think it's cool that it's challenging us. We're doing this because it's it's
and,
different. And that, again, that's just our responsibility.
It's amazing also that, if you look back as little as this time last week, I was looking at this in a completely different way.
Sure.
I think many of us were very skeptical when it first came out.
Right.
Kids have been talking to me about this at
is
school
dumb.
for
I mean,
4
come on.
weeks.
Yeah.
And, it's not going to happen here.
Right.
It won't affect us. But as you mentioned earlier, these updates were coming every few hours. I mean, the last couple of days at school last week, we were looking at stuff and getting information. Colleges were closing. Schools were closing. Yep. Sports teams were shut down. And then this ripple effect now then going to the broader economy. How's it affected you? You mentioned your business, but how?
So right now, we have a quickly stalling economy. You've got Ford just suspended they suspended production for the next, I think it's through the end of the month. They just shut down barber shops, tattoo parlors, everything like that.
I was going to get one, a tattoo. This was my week.
That's another talk. Another talk.
Another time we'll do that.
We'll do that another time.
But you've got all of everything obviously that's going on. People are going through the drive-throughs right now. Everybody's practicing social distancing. So
except for us,
right? Except for us,
we're
because
trying.
Listen, we're licking doorknobs as we're walking in. We have no fear, right? Place all of our faith in
The people
God.
need this. The people need this.
But the point being is we've got. My question now, after looking at this, can our economy survive the course of going at this through June? How do we do this? Now today I don't know. There was like something we had seen that Trump was, I guess, doing a $2,000 up to $2,000.
Yeah, there's several that
stimulus
are proposing
packages.
some type of stimulus.
Right now, one of the things that he did do is he also suspended evictions and foreclosures through April, which I think will help now, but come April they're going to have to reevaluate that. But if we're looking at the economy and we're looking at 2 weeks being down, that's something that we can bounce back from. If we're looking at 2 months and 3 months, I don't think that it's it's the same. And the question being, is the remedy here worse than the actual cause? You know,
And do you think, just from your perspective, do you think if it gets to that point where is this remedy worse, do you think that we'll slowly kind of be allowed to ease back into society?
Well, that's, if you look at those models coming from that Washington Post thing, that was one of the things that it was looking at. Once you kind of, you see all of these people that haven't been quarantined, they've gone through the virus, they get recovered, and then you have these people that are coming out, does that then start to get them sick?
Right.
So
That's a
what's
good
the
point.
best model to do this?
While
if it goes
affecting
really
the
fast,
economy, you're
Right, 'cause
balancing healthcare and economy, and obviously
because you got like China right now that went through
Kind of-
fast, and they're
coming out.
they're coming out on the other side, and you hear conflicting reports as are they doing really well? Are they kind of picking back up, or are they really not? Was that the better model to allow them to go through it?
There's so many things that affect that. I mean, they have over 1 billion people. Okay, we have about 330 million. You know, so scale is one thing. Density of population is other things. There's a lot of factors to look at. I think our economy will be able to recover. Obviously, the longer it's sustained will cause people to adapt and become, reinvent themselves. So forth. What's really interesting is we've worked so hard, not only in our culture, but I think in churches, to get people connected.
Yeah.
We do so many things where we're interlocked with one another. And this is the time where it's really asking you to undo all those circles, all those connections that you have. Because we do life in groups. We do education, we do employment, we do church, in groups. We're always together.
But that's the beauty of this right here. Imagine doing this 25 years ago.
No, there's no way you could do this.
Right. I mean, you're
Go meet in the park somewhere. It's all we would
Right.
be able to do with certain numbers of people standing
bullhorns.
distance.
And as you guys are talking, you bring up the whole thing about unknown, right? We don't know what's going to take place 2 weeks from now. We don't know what's going to take place 2 months or 3 months, 4 months from now. And if you think about it, that unknown can grip you, right? And I think a lot of fear that people have is because of the unknown. We worry about, 90% of what we worry about never happens, whatever the statistic is. But fear can really paralyze people and cause them to make decisions that maybe are not the wisest decision, because it's out of panic, it's out of fear, and a lot of that's driven by we just don't know. And so I thought of a statement, because I thought we might end up talking about this to some degree, but a good statement for our listeners to just drill into your heart, drill into your mind, for us as well. God knows your unknown. And He always has. He always will. God knows your unknown. God knows our unknown. God knows the United States unknown. And we can't lose sight that God knows even though we don't. And I think of the life of Daniel and how he was taken into captivity by the Chaldeans, the Babylonian captivity, and then God blessed him, right? And God allowed him to be the one to interpret the dream of Nebuchadnezzar and all that. But listen to what he says in Daniel chapter 2 regarding that. Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and mighty are His. And He changeth the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge unto them that know understanding. He reveals the deep and the secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with Him." And he goes on and on and on. It's just, man, just sit back and say, you know what? God knows the unknown. And although we got to prepare for it, we've got to even speculate to some degree, plan and prepare, and stock up, and all that. But ultimately, to live in fear, God's not giving us a spirit of fear, but of love and a power of a sound mind. So let's not live in fear. Let's live in knowing that God knows our unknown, and we can get through this.
I think, and this is kind of one of our family verses that we like is Romans 8:31, that when they shall, what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us?
Yeah.
God has never let me down. That doesn't mean that he's not going to allow us to kind of walk through some difficult times, but he's always been there. He's given us this right here,
Yep.
that, to where that we can, we can stay connected. And I've been laughing because everybody's, online's been saying, well, we'll get through this, we're all in this together. And it takes me back to High School Musical.
Oh, not
Sing
that again. Yeah, get your head
Wait,
in the
wait,
game.
wait,
Get your
wait.
head- get your head in the game.
But
We're all in this together, but stay 6 feet away from it.
that's right.
That's all
But I
right.
mean, God is, to think about that God has, God is for us. I mean, and this is, he's given us the ability to, he will give us the ability to prevail through this.
And there's some good things coming at us. I mean, think about all the memes that are out there,
Yes.
right? I mean, I was reading in Proverbs 17:22, a merry heart, a joyful heart doeth good like a medicine. Sometimes it's good to laugh, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we got for you
Should.
top 10 coronavirus memes. Are you ready?
There are more
All
than 10
right.
out there, but these are the 10
All right,
that
I'm
have been selected.
gonna show the meme to you as best we can, and Shane's gonna read it to you.
All
Here
right.
we go. Number 10.
Coming up at number 10. Hey, babe, just going out to get going out to get Chinese food. Be right back.
Ah, there
Look
we
at that.
go.
It's so much funnier when you read it like that. too.
There's number 10. All right,
Hold on. Number 9. All right. Easter baskets this year be like, and look at all that Lysol,
Oh, yeah.
Purell.
Oh.
All right. This
That'd
is
be,
easy.
that'd be worth a lot of money.
Well, that's if they could even find those products,
Yeah.
right, in the stores,
true.
all right?
Just a
All
basket
right.
This, year.
This is my favorite. Couldn't wash hands is now extinct.
Is this Ken Ham approved?
Dude,
that's a good point.
It is
That's
not.
a good point.
Maybe I don't know, but
Listen,
whoa,
that one
looks
goes.
like we're
Easy.
not getting a sponsorship from.
well, answer
No,
the
but
question.
there's a good point to be made. Wash your hands.
Please.
All right, here we go.
Please.
This summer be like, look at the tan lines on it.
Yeah. Actually, that could be my wife coming back from Florida here. She's on spring break in Florida. I'm
you serious?
holding down the fort here.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Have you
What a guy.
real quick? Have you guys seen the pictures of the Litzow family down there?
Having fun.
I'm telling you what.
They're having
I
a
know
great
that
time.
I know that they know what's going on. Of
course they do.
They're
They're
very
in the know.
aware and they're praying
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
But to see those pictures down there, I like to think of them as being completely oblivious to what's going on down in. Jake Litzow just loving it up, and John's
Hey,
just sitting there.
Figuratively and literally head in the sand.
Corona what?
Could be.
Corona what? What? We're not drinking. All right, here we go.
All right, number
We got
6.
number 6.
All right,
Yeah.
Christmas shopping done. Look at that, all that
Nice.
wrapped toilet
Can't even
paper.
find that. You
Nice.
couldn't find that many if you tried.
No.
That's somebody who went to
right, that's
Costco
number
or
6.
Sam's way early.
All right, number 5. This one's a little
Oh, 5.
silly.
There we go.
I got hand sanitizer down here.
Oh, I hope Ashlyn Brock isn't watching. She's going to turn it
Oh,
off.
no,
if she sees that
that's
cloud,
creepy.
All right.
Absolutely
There you
creepy.
go.
Number 4, school's out because of the coronavirus. And then it's better when you get to see that little,
Get a little
that
dancing.
There we
little
go,
dance.
baby. All right, everybody online. All right, right now. Come on. Woo! There we go.
All right, number 3, finally finished my panic room.
Oh,
Nice.
yes.
That was like one of the first ones that
That
came
was
out.
that was early on.
Let me tell you this.
Yeah.
If,
It's still
if, that's
pretty
in,
good.
if that's in the Jones house, ain't nobody getting up there past that like second, third
Right,
row.
about right here. It's about as
That's
high
all-
as you're
that's
going
So
to
the
get.
Yes.
people who pay for the gym membership actually they get the high shelf.
Oh, that's
Toilet
right.
paper.
All right,
All
number
I love this
2,
one.
just
Oh,
bought
that's
6
good.
pounds of cheese. We won't need toilet paper now.
I'm a big fan of cheese. by the way.
A little clogged.
I always get a hankering for a hunk of cheese.
Here we
Actually, I
go.
had some today for lunch.
And number
And
one.
number 1.
Now you got
Good
to
stuff.
say it the right
Right.
way. You ready?
And just like that, I got the coronavirus.
That was very good.
Nicely done, Forrest Gump.
Sitting on the bench
Yes,
there.
and
Good
Tom
job.
Hanks, he certainly
All
did.
right.
And we don't do those to make fun of anybody or anything, but you know it's good to laugh every now and then.
You got to,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, you're gonna be with your family for a long time. That'll provide some laughter or anger, maybe. Hopefully, you'll learn to get along. You can't. Some of you can't go to work, so you got to figure out a way to laugh. I'm laughing all the time.
We're kind of cynically laughing in the Jones house because obviously my wife is a homeschool teacher.
Oh, it's
And,
you.
and
Those
then you've
kids.
got
Poor kids.
our kids have had their head in the sand, have no clue what's going on, and then they find out that all of their friends get to come home. And then we start seeing posts online about, what are we going to do? And mom's banding together with schedules. And my wife's over there like, all right. I'm just
Normal
gonna-
week for her.
just gonna-
No
right,
big
it's
deal.
right.
Just keep it going.
Shout out to
That's
you,
it.
Kim.
Yeah,
He's
great
right.
job.
Hey, another shout out to Carolyn Literal. She said, "Prayer over panic, make a great church shirt slogan." get you back in business.
We've got faith over fear already.
There you
I'll-
go,
we got all
man.
kinds of
I kind of like
We can
that.
make all these memes on the shirts.
You know, and then here's something else to think
That's
about
the modern
too.
day T-shirt. Yes, it is.
You know, you talk about all this, right? And it's all, you know, it's all good to talk about. But if we don't actually get on the ground, involved in doing something for our neighbor, for those that you guys called us to love and reach out to, you know, like Kurt said, our family, our church, our community. One of the things that we've set up, and for you that are watching live, you go to our church website. You can look at the coronavirus update. Pastor puts out videos. We put out statements. And one of the statements there, one of the links is to a coronavirus help page where you can volunteer to help, or you can let us know of a need that somebody has or that you have that somebody can help meet. And what's really cool about that is you think about wrapping everything that we've talked about. If you just wrap it in love, you know, God, or Jesus speaking and saying that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all your heart and then your neighbor as yourself. If you take that in the age of grace that we live in, the love of God that we've experienced, we want to show that to our neighbors, right? We want to show it to the elderly, especially. Even yesterday, I was making phone calls and talked to a dear old lady, and or she's watching, young lady, and we you know, in our conversation, her medicine was going to be expired after today. And so she had ordered it already, and it was ready for pickup. And so on my way home from work, I went to the pharmacy. I got it and took it to her home. And I didn't go inside the house. I made sure my hands were clean. I just passed it through the door to her husband, and they were extremely thankful. Right, and it took about 7 minutes of my time, 8 minutes of my
Doesn't take
time,
long.
and so some of you out there, you can help. And I feel like that's something we need to really stress is showing love to people around us and doing what we can to help out.
This is a great opportunity to be a blessing, and I think we need to see it as Christians as an opportunity. Is it frustrating? Yes. Does it throw a wrench in our schedule? Of course it does. Is it a little inconvenient to go to the store and not find the things that we always find? We are very blessed. You know, those of us who, I think when we've all traveled to other places, other countries, they don't have those options on a normal basis, but we do. You know, we have so much. So when we don't have all of our normal things, people get a little bit fearful, but it's a great time to kind of step back and say, how can God use me in this circumstance? Am I home more often? Do I have the ability to be more flexible? And man, first of all, pray. For there's a lot of people to be praying for. But then how do I actually put the faith into action? And I'm glad the church is doing that, and hopefully we'll set up some teams from our class, from groups that can go out and just be a blessing to people and meet the need that they can't do it, but we can do it. We're able to do that, and just kind of bringing those needs and opportunities together.
Also wanted to mention for all of our viewers out there, thank you for joining our show. We are going to give away a free roll of toilet paper to anybody who is viewing while supplies last.
New,
This one,
new, not used.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
This is-
this one's going to this buddy next
Whoa.
door because his family goes through it like crazy. So you get that roll.
Hey, I did eat, and this is because of Johnny Yeary. I did have that KFC
Oh, the donut
chicken
chicken.
sandwich.
Oh, was it
listen,
good?
Listen, my life is
No,
complete.
I'm not convinced yet.
If the
Still
Lord
not
calls us
convinced.
home today, I'm
So
okay.
they take a donut, cut in half, put chicken in it.
Oh no, it's 2 donuts.
It's 2 donuts
We want to compromise.
with
Listen,
chicken between the 2 donuts.
Listen to me.
What kind of
It
donuts?
will change your life. Just glazed.
Glazed donuts.
Like you would think, oh man, they're probably just subpar donuts. No.
No wonder you have high blood pressure.
Listen.
This is gonna- you're
Coronavirus
gonna need
can't
more-
get into this because of all the cholesterol and the high blood
Well,
pressure.
but they actually say that sugar lowers your immune system. So
Well, then I'm in
I don't know
trouble.
about that.
You're
I'm
in
in
trouble.
trouble.
You're going to need that. You're probably going to need.
Well, while we're talking about that, let me give you a little bit of information about the death rates of coronavirus, because I know that a lot of people think about that. I've got that pulled up. And I was just thinking, because of the young people and the age ranges, you're talking about right now, people with coronavirus, 80 plus years have a 14.8% death rate. Now, they say that's up as high as 21.9 if you count just the across the country or across the world, looking at the amount of beds that aren't there. So they're just not able to get the care that they really need. 70 to 79-year-olds is at 8%. 60 to 69-year-olds is a 3.6% chance of dying. 50 to 59 is 1.3.
Wow.
And then you go 40 to 49 is 0.4%, and then under that is 0.2%. From there on down. So the likelihood of you getting sick and dying is so low under the that especially that age of probably 60. However, the worry is us getting it and passing it on.
Passing it, right.
But we have such a low risk to be able, and God's tasked us with the to go out and take care of the elderly, the widowers, and we need to do that and especially our class,
Yeah.
is something
That's
that
good.
we can do. And I want to say the same thing, that our church, that's just awesome that our church is stepping out and trying to reach those people and just see what we can do.
That's
And
good.
the fear, we need to be in fear for them, but for us, the younger, I mean, it's not so much of a fear that we need to worry about.
We can't play baseball, but I brought in a prop nonetheless. This is Brett's glove from Akron. He's got the kangaroo on there, Zippy.
Nice.
So they got a
Zip was.
yeah, there's a little kangaroo there.
know
Well, you
what
don't
the-
see part of it. His probably guy has a mask on for protection there. But most guys get their name or some statement on there. Brett had a verse put on there, Isaiah 41:10, and that verse is neat because as you talk about that, and you talk about death, obviously that brings about some fear and concern. But in that verse, there's actually a couple commands. Fear not, for I'm with you.
Yep.
Be not dismayed. Like those are commands. Those aren't just, hey, try not to
Right.
fear. God's saying that. And he says, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That's a great reminder to us because you start, in situations like this, you start to realize how small we are. Like, I don't have control. I don't know if I have it. I wouldn't know if I were spreading it. Obviously, I hope I'm not because I've tried to obey all these rules and laws and stuff that we have. But so comforting to know that our God says, don't worry about this. I got it. I got it. That's a great reminder for us.
That's good. I think it's a good reminder, too, that we're out of time.
Yeah, it
So
is.
thank you for watching live and viewing our average bros just chatting around the
Inaugural
tables.
average bros, but this could become a thing.
I really think it might. It's got potential.
I don't know if the chicken and donuts will become a
I
thing.
don't know, man. That kind of got the most
let's
we
get a little bit of
statements
feedback.
here,
We
right?
could rate.
like
Are we gonna? Do we have time to take some questions? A couple questions.
We could take some questions, I guess, if they have any.
do
Most
we-
of them are about the donuts and the chicken
Do
and
we-
asking
I
about
mean,
your
could we
high exceptional
Just maybe
nutritional
one or
standards.
two questions that anybody had.
Anybody have any
real
questions?
quick?
You got to type them in quick. All right. Let me as you're typing in, we got Pastor James. Hey, good to see you, Pastor James. He said Shane has high nutritional standards, so
Well, of
glad
course,
he's
I think we-
agreed
I
for
mean,
that.
listen, you've got
Johnny Erie, donuts to death. Wow, that's good.
We've experienced the donuts via Johnny,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I like the donuts. I like the chicken. The combo, I'm not sold on yet. I haven't had it though, so
Gotta
maybe
try
I'm
it.
just.
Chad
speaking
New
out
wants
of
to
line.
know if he didn't realize you ate anything besides Chipotle. I was
well,
thinking more like
that's-
rapid fire pizza.
That's why I got to have this.
I
Rapid
gotcha.
fire's gone, but the Chipotle, that's
That's
for
the new? All right.
That's for the toilet
All right.
paper.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions pop up, so
Okay.
People
not
are missing
sure-
out.
not
They're
sure
probably
we're
going to
gonna
load it up. They're probably going to watch this archived, and probably just questions will flood in
Well,
later.
all I know is we'll be back here next week, Wednesday at 7 for,
Absolutely.
what is it?
Average
Bros.
Bros.
I'm Bob,
I'm Shane.
I'm Kurt.
and have a good night.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm watching the video though. See, there we go. I thought it went awesome.
How long did we go?